for the Pilecki-Institut, talking about this experience of 20th century in context of two totalitarianisms. It's very important because this is this memory of the Eastern Europe. We remember about experience of German Nazi Third Reich and experience of communism, and the victims of both totalitarianisms should be commemorated. And I think this very interesting initiative, Pan-European Memorial for the Victims of these both totalitarianisms, is the sign of this bringing these both cultures of remembrance from Western and Eastern Europe together. And I hope that's why we wanted very much in our institute to discuss this project also with this Ukrainian perspective. And that's why I asked our friends from Vichy, our curator Ewa Jakubowska, that she will propose the way how we can discuss it. And I hope, because it's right now, it's really this moment to rethink this, how we remember, when we think about this apocalypse which happened in 20th century, how we describe it, how we understand. And I hope today, when the war is going on all the time and Russia again attacked and the genocide is still going on, yes, the Russians, they really they didn't attack only Ukraine as a state. They want to destroy Ukrainian identity. And we should, in this context, understand, because for many Western countries and societies was surprised how it's possible that it happened. I mean, what does it mean? And this showed again that how history matters. I mean, that if we understand what happened in Second World War and what happened in 20th century, and we can recognize what was the source of that, then perhaps we can better react, and recognize today and presence and future. And thank you very much. I think now our friend Marek Mutor, president of this European platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for this invitation to Pilecki-Institut, to Mrs. Director. Thank you for your hospitality, for your friendship. Pilecki-Institut is also the part of our platform, because Platform of European Memory and Conscience is a kind of international association gathered together archives, museum, research centers, and institutions like Pilecki-Institut. We have now 70 member organizations from 23 countries. And together we act to build this unique memorial in Brussels. So the aim of our meeting is to make you more familiar with the project, to discuss it with you. Yesterday we had a great opportunity to present the project during the conference in the Bundestag, and there was a great discussion, very fruitful for us, I think. We focused on substantial matters. Today the presentation will be the presentation made by Tszwai, who is an architect and winner of the competition, and we will focus on the design. And of course, we want to present you the details of the project, and today in this kind of much more workshop atmosphere, I think that we can discuss even more deep. So I would like to stress at the beginning that the project is rooted in the European Parliament resolution from 2009. And in accordance with the words of the European Parliament resolution, this memorial site is to commemorate the victims of all totalitarian regimes. So the scope of the project includes victims of Nazism, fascism, and communism as well. And why? Why? Why this project? Why we need the memorial? Basically, because totalitarian systems are responsible for the deaths of millions of people in the 20th century. The crime of the Holocaust occupies a special and unique position in this context, but all totalitarian regimes cost millions of victims with their criminal crimes, criminal actions. So people were persecuted and killed because of their race, nationality, social origin, religion, or just for no good reason, just because they existed. And this commemoration is needed. In my opinion, there are three main reasons why we need this. First of all, we owe it to the victims. So it is just like humanistic reason. We owe it to them, to their families. The second reason is that we need this memory to strengthen our societies, to be more sensitivity to the basic human rights and resistance to anti-democratic tendencies. So it's worth to stress that never forget means never again. It's very close to each other. We have to remember to be resilient for this kind of atrocities in the future. And the third reason why is because the experience of totalitarianism has affected all societies, all European societies, to a greater or lesser extent. Therefore, this is a kind of common European experience. And dealing with the past is also, this difficult past, is also a common European experience. So if Europe is to be even more united in future, it requires certain elements of common memory, and this one is one of the crucial. And the scope of the project is about victims of 20th century totalitarianism, but we have quite contemporary context, of course, for this reason to commemoration. Of course, the war that Russia is waging against Ukraine and European aspirations of Ukrainian people. This war is deep-rooted in the Cold War way of viewing the world. So we can say even stronger that since communism was not properly judged and commemorated in the international space, I say communism because this war is rooted in the communist way of thinking. So it was relatively easy for public opinion of democratic countries to accept the possibility of cooperation with a state headed by a former officer of KGB. So maybe if we remembered better, it would be much more difficult to start this war for Putin. As it was said, so today's war is not only a military operation, it's also the mass graves, child kidnapping, deportations, so everything we remember from totalitarian past. So now we come to the project itself, and maybe brief history. In 2009, European Parliament adopted resolution on European conscience and totalitarianism, and in this resolution, European Parliament calls for the establishment of a platform of European memory and conscience and for the creation of pan-European documentation center or memorial for the victims of all totalitarian regimes. In the answer in 2011, in the answer on this resolution in 2011, platform of European memory and conscience was established. So we were established in response to the European Parliament resolution as a community of institutions dealing with the totalitarian past in Europe. In 2017, we ran the open competition for the design of the project, and it was recognized by European Parliament in this way that the competition was under auspices of President of European Parliament and physically it was in European Parliament. And jury was an international jury, international committee of specialists, historians, scientists, but also architects. Among others, there was Norman Foster, well-known architect who, as far as I know, designed the dome of the Bundestag. So this is the quite close context. And the winner of the competition was the ZOI SAW, Chinese-British architect based in London. And he prepared and presented the unique concept, An Echo in Time. This is the title of the project. And in 2019, European Parliament adopted second important resolution on the importance of European remembrance for the future of Europe. This resolution stressed again the importance of this kind of commemorations for the future of Europe. By the way, it's worth to mention that Vladimir Putin himself reacted during the press conference on against this resolution of European Parliament. It was in 2019, and I mention it because it shows us how history is important in the politics, international politics. And in 2022, after pandemic period, we decided to implement the project. So we started the public discussions, the substantial works, and simultaneously we are providing the process with Brussels administration to secure the site and to start in the nearest future the application process to receive the permit. We know that this design, which is very inclusive and very ZY will present it. This project needs a lot of discussions, meetings like that Europe-wide, and we are doing this. We have been done this since 2022. We visited many different countries, many different conferences, and we organized a lot of presentations. Each one is very important for us. It gives us a feedback of European people, and is fruitful for us to make this project even more inclusive, even more successful. So this is all from my side, and I would like to introduce you ZY SAW. Please, ZY. ZY is an architect. By the way, his personal story is very, let's say, moving, and maybe ZY will tell a little bit about his Belarusian experience, which was quite influential for this project. But ZY was born in China. He escaped with his family from there to Hong Kong. He finished his school in Hong Kong in British scholar system, and after that he emigrated or came to United Kingdom, his new fatherland, and he finished Cambridge, and he is a good architect who knows very well history of Central and Eastern Europe, and who feel this project very well. So I think that it was very good choice of the committee. Committee had to decide among many different projects, and this one is really nice. So ZY, floor is yours.
Thank you, President Mutor, and can you hear me okay? Thank you. It's just a huge honor for me to be here today to share with you the, if you like, the backstory of the project. And I was planning to share with you, my personal experience of the memories of the totalitarian past of Europe. And I just really want to begin with you, begin the presentation by sharing with you a very personal story. This was me sitting in front of a 300 years old derelict synagogue in Snonim in modern day Belarus. But obviously, as you know, it used to be part of the Polish territory, and Snonim was one of the few towns in Poland with a significant Jewish population. And the reason why I was there was because I was working very closely with many volunteers from the UK as well as the United States in an attempt to restore this 300 years old synagogue in Snonim. It was very unpleasant experience because, you know, we know who's controlling Belarus nowadays, and it's really sick to remember the fact that it's only an hour away from here, there's a dictatorship in Europe. And we had, at one point, our project manager, Belarusian project manager, arrested. And in the end, after the 2020 presidential election, we decided to withdraw ourselves from the project altogether. But why we wanted to restore this synagogue, it was because of, you know, I was invited to the project by my friend, good friend Simon Kaplinski, whose family members were murdered during the Holocaust. And in 1941, the Nazi troops entered Snonim, and they were very efficient. You know, in just over 1 year, they managed to slaughter, you know, men and women and children, almost the entire Jewish population of the town, and children were manually murdered because the Nazi troops wouldn't want to waste their bullets, so they manually killed the children. And this artwork was created to commemorate my friend Simon's, you know, late uncles and aunts who never really grew old. Simon is over 80 years old now, and obviously the story didn't stop there. And I'm sure, even though this story happened in, you know, Poland, Belarus, it will resonate with you, you know, regardless of your nationalities. And because similar stories, millions of them, did happen across Europe around that time. And the story didn't stop there. You know, Hitler's army was defeated, but then Stalin returned. And then some Belarusian soldiers who fought alongside the Poles for the Allies, they make the right decision to relocate to the United Kingdom instead of returning home. And they started a new life there in London, and they brought their families with them, and they've established a place together, you know, and they wanted to keep their identity alive. And I said to Marek all the time, you know, when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Chopin, but Chopin didn't have a country, so how can he kept claiming himself to be a Pole. And so the same here, the Belarusian, they've established a boarding school to teach their kid their own Belarusian language, which was not even encouraged in their motherland. So this place became more Belarusian than Belarus itself, and they've even converted one of the tiny rooms in a house they bought for the community into a place of worship, and observe the, you know, Eastern Catholic Church, which they consider their national church inside, and it's the very established church in the western part of Ukraine, as well as I understand. And it was their collective dream to really one day to build a dedicated church according to their nationality. And I've traveled to Belarus many, many years later. I skipped many details, but I got to know their descendants, and they've invited me to come up with the design of the church, and they invited me to travel to their beautiful country. And what I've learned that, the biggest lesson I've learned was that, you know, the Soviet Union was the biggest destroyer of culture and cultural identities. And I've studied the pre-Russian church architecture of their country, and these are the sketches I've made. But without going into too much details, you know, in the end, the community managed to build this humble little wooden church in London. And, you know, I want to draw your attention to the Baroque dome sitting on the top, because it was something that was it was banned by the Russian authority. You know, when the Russian took over their land, one of the very first thing they did, you know, in the early 19th century was to replace these Baroque cupolas with the onion domes, because they were converting their churches into Russian Orthodox churches. So for them, it's not really just a functional church, it's an expression of their national identity. And I will skip that because it's not really relevant to the presentation. So at night, the little church will glow from within when they were having liturgies and all that. I'm sure, you know, many of you will recognize this gesture. This is a tribute to all the Belarusians who were murdered during the Second World War when they were locked up inside those beautiful wooden synagogues and churches, and they were burned alive by the Nazi troops. And you know, this building it really resonates with many Belarusians worldwide, and I think it was last year visited by Svetlana Tianovskaya, the only legitimate president of Belarus, and she was personally very moved by the project as well. So that was my encounter with, the memories of European totalitarian past, and that's why when the platform launched the competition, I just felt it was a very innocent act. I just felt compelled to submit a design proposal. I tend not to participate in architectural competitions because most of the time I thought it was just a waste of time and energy and resources and money, lots of money. And but this one I just felt compelled to offer them a proposal without thinking too much. And the site was proposed to be at Sean Square. As you can see from this aerial photo, is really conveniently located in close proximity to all these major EU institutions. And the site might change because many bureaucrats from Brussels are feeling very funny about we building anything there, so we don't know. But the site was strategically chosen, and we just have to work around that. And I was visiting the site, and I just felt very disengaged, to be honest, because the site, yes, is a good site in terms of its geographical, significance. But then when you go there, you don't feel the weight of history. It's not like if you're visiting the synagogue I just mentioned, or even Auschwitz, or even anyway. So the site did totalitarianism happen across the entire continent in multiple locations, and it's very difficult to compel passers-by to feel connected to the victims if they are just passing this square. It could be any random public squares in Europe. So I was not very optimistic in terms of coming up with something meaningful, and I just really want to quickly share with you my struggles really as an architect. And I was just showing something from imagination, and I started drawing some shapes, and you can see I was really struggling. These could be memorials of anything. It was a lot about designing rather than really trying to connect people with their collective past. And I was going nowhere. And the more I think about the design, I found it more difficult to actually coming up with anything meaningful. And in the end, I just felt like, do they really need a designer, if at all? But then the breakthrough came when I found this sketch with a lonely boy to the right and a man carrying a suitcase, and I wrote beautiful, meaningful, moves heart there. And those words weren't mine. I dropped them down when I was attending the competition launch in the European Parliament, and the former managing director of the Platform of European Memory and Conscience, Nina Winkelmann, when she was launching the competition, she made it clear she wanted to see a beautiful, meaningful memorial that moves people's heart. Moving people's heart is really at the core of this initiative. And I keep building my thought upon that. And I was just thinking, how can we transfer the emotions and the sufferings and the memories of the victims to a European city, to a public space? How can we do that? And that was the biggest question preoccupying my mind during those, I think, 6 or 7 months when I was preparing for the submission of the design. And then I found these photographs only like maybe a year or two later after the competition was concluded. And on the day when I was visiting the square, I saw this lonely man wearing a coat, carrying an umbrella and a bag full of, I don't know what that was, you know. And he was passing the square, and I was captivated by this image. And you can see I kept taking pictures of this guy. And then somehow this image must have found its way into my unconscious mind. And I just, it wasn't a sudden, very abrupt process. It was more, nuanced and gradual. But I just said to myself, maybe we don't really need a designer to impose his or her personalities onto the project. Maybe the project is really about the victims. And maybe our jobs collectively, not just me, but everybody's job is just to be the messenger of these victims. And I was dreaming about having a messenger carrying a suitcase. He's collected, or she collected, or they collected the last letters written by the victims to their loved ones from all around Europe, and comes to the middle of the square and then scatter the last letters all over the public squares. And letters are important artifacts, and particularly last letters written by the victims. And then in that way, we can bring context to the square. This square could be anywhere in the world. It just needs to be a public square. And the design concept, if there's a concept at all, is very, very straightforward and simple. Everybody could understand. It's a one-liner. There's no highly intellectualized, abstract ideas. It's not about the egos of the designers. And we just need to find those letters. And the success of the project hinges on whether we could actually find those real letters. And the process of finding those letters was the most humbling experience in my entire career, because even my colleagues from my office didn't believe anyone would give us permissions to use those letters. So I remember there was only 1 month left before the deadline set out by the platform. In the end, they extended the deadline by, I think, 2 weeks. They should have done that earlier, then I would have more time, rather than stressing myself out. But then we only have 1 month left, and my colleagues only managed to identify one letter, and it was written by typewriter. It wasn't even written by hand. And then they were like, well, that's what we've got. And I said, well, look, let me give it one last push. If we can't find any, or if we can't find enough to create this memorial, then we give up, then we don't submit anything. And I started to send out speculative emails to friends, and who I know might have access to those letters potentially. I remember it was a Friday. I sent out the email, and by Monday I've already got an email from the Lithuanian embassy saying they have an archive in Lithuania, and they're happy to let us use the entire archive. That was 2,000 letters already. And then a week later, 5,000. And a month later, 40,000 coming from around the world, from probably institutions, private collections, the relatives of the victims. And many of them, sent us their good wishes, and many of them actually translated the letters into English to help us understand. And I remember I was reading out some of them in the office, and it was always followed by dead silence, because these letters are so powerful that you don't really need any architects to run a commentary along them. You read them as they are, and they are what they are, and they tell the story truthfully. And also the handwriting as well. Imagine if you're locked up in a prison cell in Gulag or a concentration camp, and you know your days are numbered, and every letter you write to your mother could be your last letter. Nobody can fake those handwriting for you. The handwriting, they're not just words. They are, very powerful, if you like, tools to connect us back to history. And these are just some good wishes from the donors. But obviously, we're not going to use the real letters as such, because they're sacred. So the idea is to digitalize them and enlarge them to large scale so that they're large enough for anyone to read them from a standing position. They have to be readable. And the idea is very simple. We're just trying to use modern technology to permanently print them onto the new paving blocks of the new square and repave the square with the enlarged images of these original letters. And this is an artist's impression of how the memorial would look like from above. And in fact, if you're walking past the square, you wouldn't really see a Soviet-style monument rising up from the ground, a tall column, for example, because this memorial is really not about confrontation. It's not really about come and look at me. It's really about healing. And it's on a normal day, a person might pass the public square without noticing it. It's perfectly fine. Because if you're not emotionally ready, you're not emotionally ready. There's no point forcing people to confront with history. But one day you might notice a letter on the ground written in your own mother language, and you then make that emotional connection with the victim. And this is the whole point of commemoration. It goes both ways. You might question, well, is it fine to step over the letters? It's fine, because if you look at churches or cemetery around Europe, it's quite common for the gravestones of even kings and queens to be laid down on the church floor for people to step over. And most importantly, the donors of these letters are all fully aware of the design intents, and they gave us the permission to do that. And so this, if anything, this is a very European way of commemorating. But most importantly, this gesture is a metaphor in the sense that, yes, these letters embody very heavy personal stories, but at the same time, our lives go on in the free world on top of them. We are their legacy. And I think it's very easy to take democracy for granted. I think everybody knows what's going on in Ukraine and Belarus, particularly Ukraine right now. And the irony is Europe is the birthplace of democracy, and the biggest gift Europe's given to humanity was not Renaissance or even Industrial Revolution. The biggest gift Europe's given to humanity is democracy. And you still don't have full democracy in Europe. And it's something worth reflecting on. I think I'm coming to the end of this presentation. I think we might have a bit of time to just read out. I really don't enjoy doing that because it makes me feel really, really bad and sad every time after I read them out. But I feel compelled to do that every time when I was traveling with President Mutor and Wojciech, my colleague from the platform. It's important that people hear them. And this one is written by a son to his mother. I would encourage you to, if you like, maybe close your eyes to just imagine this is a letter written to you by your relatives. And it goes, "Dear Mama, a sad presentiment tells me that we've met for the last time today. Dearest Mama, fate keeps on being cruel to you. This life of mine, that together we have contended so many times to death, finally manages to escape me. Please find comfort in the thought that I'll be strong until the end. Certainly I do not feel afraid. The only thorn in my heart is knowing that Millie and you will be alone in this world." And he was executed shortly after. Most letters were written to their mothers, and it makes perfect sense because mothers are givers of life. And if you have to write to someone for your last letter, you will pick your mom, right? Usually. And there's another one here. This one was written by someone from the Gulag, from Siberia, to his mother. "Dear Mama, one thing that's bad here is the fact that it's overcrowded here. We live with 70 people in a narrow barrack. I sometimes feel so depressed that I don't know what to do. Mama said that I should save my health. That's the only way to survive here. God forbid you from falling ill. Then you can count that you are dead." And in fact, that was his last letter. He was executed not long after. And this person, I think, was of Latvian, Belarusian, Russian, and Tatar origins. And I think I can't do that anymore. I will stop here, but thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Cool. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the presentation. And right now we are turning to the next part of our event, and that's including discussion, which will start with the commentary to what we have heard, the concept, the presentation as such. And I would like to invite to the stage Pan Professor Andrii Portnov, Ukrainian historian, essayist, and editor. He is the chair professor and Engeled History of Ukraine at the European University Viadrina in Frankfurt Oder, and a director of the Prisma Ukraine Research Network Eastern Europe, and also the new Ukrainian Polish Studies Center in Frankfurt Oder, Viadrina University. Then I would like to invite also to the stage Florian Mausbach, city planner and initiator of the memorial in Berlin for Polish World War II victims. As the president of the Federal Office for the Building and Regional Planning from 1995 to 2009, he was at the forefront of the structural transformation of the reunified Berlin. And also Krista-Marija Läbe, which spokesperson, as a part of which Krista-Marija led the organization's press team and media activities, gaining national and occasional international expos. That's for the start, and as I invite Pan Professor Andrii Portnov first to the stage, I will give first the microphone to comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I should admit I'm also kind of still moved by the presentation we've heard and those quotes, and of course I'd like to thank everybody engaged in the project, because for me it's a new experience as well. I should admit that it's not like the project I'm following for years. So now I'm like seeing this almost final result, and I'm indeed pleased by the way it is, it is designed and preserved, and of course while listening, I've made a lot of comments for myself. Okay, maybe I'll share some of them with you, and then we'll see what my colleagues will say and how it will move further. Believe me or not, today in the morning I've had a master exam with my student, very good student actually. She did it brilliantly. And another examiner, so the colleague of mine, asked her a question I'm now asking myself till nowadays. The question was like that. Tell me, which year in the European history would you see was a kind of, like turning point or decisive one for the Eastern Europe? And then he made like a second point, like maybe 1945, so the end of the Second World War. And the students said, no, actually, I'm not sure about it. Because for a lot of countries, like, again, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus also, Ukraine for sure, yeah, it was kind of the end of something, but not the end of the war, because we have underground fights and whatever. Also not the end of like this issue of territorial integrity, because as we all know, by the majority of Western countries, the situation when the Baltic states became part of the Soviet Union was never acknowledged officially, finally, and so on. So in this sense, actually, like when we are hearing about the victims of totalitarianism, it's always, of course, a question like, where should we start, where should we end? Maybe there should be no ending at all to this narrative. Maybe even, to some extent, the ongoing war against Ukraine and the EU is also kind of, continuation of the contradictions and conflicts we've had during, like, even the Second World War. So I don't know, but I'm really, like, asking myself now. And also, dear colleagues, I remember when Poland and also many other Eastern and Central European countries joined the European Union in 2004, many people said, now Europe is reunited. Now it's united Europe. And then the very same year, but later on, in August, the Orange Revolution in Ukraine started. So like, think about it. So we are kind of happily said, okay, now it's united, we could move further. And then one more country says, but wait, there is like what about us? And yeah, and it's going like on and on. And let's imagine the future, because I'm pretty sure that the question of, again, Belarus joining this community will raise at some point. And we should maybe somehow be prepared for it. Okay, that's first. Second, of course, it's a very big issue. For me personally also, a very difficult issue. How to make commemorative, working, effective, productive. Because we all know those debates about, for instance, what was done out of the National Socialist concentration camps in different countries of Europe. We have those memorials. Some colleagues of mine would question whether they function well enough to promote the knowledge of all the, horrific atrocities committed by the Nazis. And here, of course, it's also the question of what is being done with the monuments, memorials to the victims of the Soviet regime, actually everywhere. In Lithuania, again, as we all know, the former KGB prison turned into a museum in Ukraine. Also, let's hope for a better future in Russia, because it all started somehow and happened there. And let us also not forget that Dzerzhinsky Memorial was removed first in Moscow, and it's still like an open issue, when will it be taken back? Maybe never, maybe next week. We'll see. It's very much an open question nowadays. And actually, when I mentioned Dzerzhinsky, let me mention something else, dear colleagues. Let us not forget that in the occupied territories of southern Ukraine, for instance, we have now a very interesting situation when quite often those Russian authorities there, they are not just reinstalling Lenin monuments. That's like, that's an easy part of the story. Sometimes they are installing new monuments or street names or commemorative plaques, whatever, to KGB officers and generals, for instance, who were, born there, people personally responsible for killing, a lot of people in many countries, actually. Also, for instance, people involved in, killing Trotsky in Mexico, stuff like that. And now we have streets named after them in the occupied southern Ukraine. So in this sense, I think it was a good point made by Marek, that it is not just like about history. It's also about, it's kind of like ongoing political, ideological, whatever, struggle. So it's a very serious matter. It's not just about the past, it's about the contemporarity, and I'm afraid also about the future, how we'll see it. Maybe the last point to start with, it's very difficult, dear colleagues. Of course, we all know how it's difficult to visualize something, like, for instance, how to visualize the Great Famine, the Holodomor. Especially keeping in mind, for instance, that there is no footage, there are just a few photos taken. The rest is, you know, is like imagination. So how could we imagine what happened, like the entire villages dying of hunger, when we have no historically approved visual basis for it? That's a big challenge to any author. And in this sense, I like, actually, I should admit, I like, you know, this idea to rely upon authentic letters, because it's still like artifact, yeah, written by someone, yeah, someone imprisoned or whatever. And we also all know how important the letters were. Like, for instance, when during the Second World War, some families of Ukrainian rioters executed in Stalinist purges, they brought those letters to the West, they published them. For instance, it happened to the letters of Draychmara, this prominent Ukrainian poet who died in the Gulag. And it was, of course, a big shock. So when those letters were published and shown, like, look, that's the letter sent from the guy, as you rightly said, to his mother and his sister, it's kind of, you know, it's a completely different story. So maybe that's really kind of a way to do it, even though, again, dear colleagues, let us not forget that the lot of victims of different terrible regimes, they were incapable, for several reasons, to leave any letters. First of all, quite often you have no chance or no way, no, let's say, technical possibility to even write and send it. And secondly, we're also talking about people who could not write. Because again, coming back, for instance, to the Great Famine, the absolute majority of people who died, they were not literate, and they were not even like used of this idea. So let's just think about it, that letters, it's a great material. I like it so much, a lot, but we're also talking about millions of victims, I'm afraid literally millions, who were incapable of leaving even a letter after what happened to them. But really, thank you so much indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Thank you for your ideas. And right now I would invite Mr. Florian Mausbach to give his commentary.
Yeah, first I must congratulate you. It's very convincing solution for a very difficult duty. I think it's very abstract. First is anti-totalitarianism as a item for a memorial. It's very abstract, and to connect it with the concrete suffering of individual people, this is really a great idea. I'm, as an architect and town planner, I took part on a lot of juries in competitions, and I know how difficult such question. Congratulations, really. Now, my English is not so fluently like my neighbor, so allow me to take my notice and read it. Yeah. I was asked also for my experience in German memory. And so I have written some ideas about it. The beginning of human culture, it is said, was the burial of the dead. Respect for human dignity. Memorials commemorating the victims of degrading inhuman violence symbolically restore their human dignity. The erection of a European monument to the victims of totalitarianism proves that the European Union is more than a useful organization. Europe has a soul. It is respect for human dignity, the core of anti-totalitarianism. Unlike the intimidating monumentalism of the memorials of totalitarian dictatorships, democracy seeks to develop new forms of commemoration and remembrance. In Germany, after a period of repression in the post-war period and the inability to mourn, a new culture of remembrance and commemoration has developed. In the mid-1980s, when I was an urban planner for the city of Frankfurt am Main, a new public utility building, Stadtwerke, was planned on the site of the synagogue, destroyed in 1938, in this city with a great Jewish tradition. Maybe you know the picture of Beckmann about this synagogue. It's a famous picture. It was only after a young Jewish architect protested that a compromise was reached. I could help with it. A memorial to the murdered Frankfurt Jews was erected on part of the site next to the historic Jewish cemetery. There were long and heated debates about whether and how to design the Holocaust memorial. From the founding of the Citizens Initiative in 1988 to the opening in 2005, various competitions were held to determine its design. Are monuments still in keeping with the times? Quite a few intellectuals questioned the very idea of commemoration in the form of monuments. Even today, even the Federal Minister of Culture rejected the Holocaust memorial at the time and called for a museum. An underground information site was then the compromise. A memorial for the Polish victims of the German occupation 1939 till 1945 was the last wish of Władysław Bartoszewski, resistance fighter against two totalitarian dictatorships and patron of German-Polish reconciliation. In 2017, a citizens' initiative called for the erection of a Polish memorial in the center of Berlin, in front of the World War II ruins of the Anhalter Bahnhof station. Subsequently, the German Bundestag passed important resolutions concerning Poland on the culture of remembrance and commemoration, and the foreign minister then made recommendations for a memorial and meeting place. The current Federal Minister of Culture recently commissioned two declared opponents of the memorial to develop a concept for a German-Polish house. Thomas Schmidt commented on this in Die Welt: Ein Denkmal ist ein Denkmal, eine Volkshochschule eine Volkshochschule. A memorial is a memorial. An adult education center is an adult education center. Alexander Estes, he was born in Moscow, journalist in Switzerland, I didn't know him till now, distinguished between Gedenkkultur und Denkkultur, culture of remembrance and culture of thought, in the Frankfurter Allgemeine of the January 18th. A culture of remembrance, quotation, does not primarily serve a realpolitik, historical or educational purpose. Commemoration should raise awareness of the humanity, value and dignity of life. It is an absolute humanity. Remembrance through knowledge, transfer and encounters is undeniably necessary. No doubt. Compassionate remembrance, whether in ritualized ceremonial form or in the form of artistic monuments, is something else. A memorial in a prominent central public place is a lasting public statement. It is cast in ore, also in Erz gegossen, or carved in stone, also in Stein gemeißelt, and addresses everyone, victims and those affected, on behalf of all. A memorial to the victims of the German occupation of Poland would speak from nation to nation as a sign of mourning and a bow to the victims and a public confession of German guilt. No reconciliation without confession was Bishop Desmond Tutu's condition in the South African Reconciliation Commission. This applies all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I will invite Krista-Marija Läbe.
Yeah, thank you very much, and also thank you to my previous speakers. I want to agree, this monument really resonates with me as a representative of a Ukrainian organization here in Germany that is also fighting for recognition and visibility of the Ukrainian victims of the Second World War, and who has done projects throughout the last 2 years about that. And also as a person with Ukrainian background myself, I really miss often in the German discourse the visibility of all the victims of a National Socialism, and even recognition that there was a other totalitarian system in Europe. Because often in Germany we only talk because the crimes of the National Socialism was so severe, what the Germans did back then, that there is often no space to even talk about what the Soviet Union did after that or before. And I want to start first about why such a memorial, that what you're planning is so important, because it shows that there are different perspectives on it, right? Some people suffered through 2 totalitarian systems, and some there are different perspectives on it, and it would also show the perspective of the victims, because we have the letters black and white that on the ground, and people could read it, and it would give also visibility to the different backgrounds of the victims, which is often not part of the discourse, unfortunately. A lot of the victims do not get the same recognition. We have here in Germany, for example, ahead of 2022, when we were talking about what countries were the most affected of the Second World War, most of the time we were talking about Russia, not even about the Soviet Union. If you look at university surveys, most of the people, I think around 30 to 40%, would name Russia as one of the main victims. Ukraine was in this study, I think, at 2%. 2% would recognize Ukraine as a major victim, and even Poland was named far less than Russia. And Russia was only occupied by, I think, 2% or 3% by Russia, by Germany. And why I'm saying this, it's really important, because when the full-scale invasion started here in Germany, a lot of people were saying, but we cannot send military support to Ukraine, because then they used these weapons against Russia, and Germany did these horrible crimes to the Russian people, so we cannot support Ukraine right now with weapons, especially about the tank situation. We were facing this argument over and over again, even from very educated people. And this really raises the question about the damage wrong historical remembrance can do. Because if people would actually remember it correctly, that Nazi Germany was occupying Ukraine completely, and what they did to the population there, the Jewish population, but also to the Ukrainians, for example, also to the forced laborers who were deported to Germany in the millions, then they would maybe have seen from the very beginning, not even in 2022, but also in 2014, what responsibility they also have against Ukraine, like in terms of Ukraine. And we didn't see that. And now we have a discussion about that in Germany, thank God, like more, that it's not only thought about Russia, but also about other people, other countries. And as Vice, as our organization, we started in 2022 to also raise the question of a memorial for Ukrainian victims in Berlin, because every year on the 8th and 9th of May, you probably know, we have a huge Soviet memorials, a few of them in Berlin. Russians, also from Russia and from all over Germany, are going there and partying, actually. They're drinking there. Not all of them, but a lot of groups. So, for example, the Night Wolves, that are connected to the Russian regime and so on, they're coming and they're drinking there. And obviously, during the Russian war of aggression, Ukrainians do not feel comfortable to go to these memorials, especially as the Soviet Union also caused huge suffering and a genocide against Ukrainian people. So we do not feel comfortable to commemorate about our fallen victims at Soviet memorials that are not even naming the correct dates on them, because they're saying 41 to 45. They are completely ignoring that the war started in 39. And in the first year, we faced a huge problem, because the city was forbidding Ukrainian flags and alongside Russian flags and Ukrainian symbols, alongside Russian symbols at these memorials. And we could not believe it. Not only was our home country attacked by Russians, also we were not allowed to even show our national symbols at these memorials. And in 2023, we faced the same situation again. And luckily, we went to court. We had a really great lawyer, Patrick Heinemann, who was supporting us and fighting in court, so that we were actually allowed to be with our Ukrainian symbols at the memorials, and Russians were not, because they were misusing this culture of remembrance to justify the current war of aggression against Ukraine. They were celebrating, we can do it again, and they meant defeat the Nazis in Ukraine, right? Which is a propaganda lie. So we see this really great need on the one side that we have proper culture of remembrance, and I think this monument would be like a healing process for a lot of people, that we are even seen, that we get visibility, and that we get also some kind of justice. Because the crimes of the Soviet Union and the crimes also of the Russian Empire before that, they were never punished in any way, right? And we see, as long as these crimes are going unpunished until today, these crimes return. And I think this monument would be a really important step to show, to even acknowledge that there were more victims, and that we need to talk about it, and we need to give them visibility and recognition, to also remind ourselves that we have the responsibility to do something against totalitarian regimes, which are unfortunately still in some countries in Europe, like for example in Belarus and in Russia, and obviously Ukraine is right now the one that is suffering through it, that the lessons were not learned and the actions were not properly taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your commentary. What we see that the memory is kind of the key for the justice, and justice, that's just the one possibility for sustainable peace, peace for all. Because the danger that culture of remembrance, culture in terms in the way how we speak about the memory, very often instrumentalized by dictator. And when the people underestimate this memory concept, leads to the dictator, gives to the dictator even much more power. I thank you for our experts. We are not finishing, we are actually starting the discussion round, and I would like to invite and one more round of applause for the actually creator of the idea to this monument, Tszwai, to the stage. Award-winning artist and architect from London. He is founder of the Strand Architects and a visiting lecturer at the University of Westminster. Thank you. And also I'm inviting more people. I again inviting Marek Mutor, president of the Platform of European Memory of Consciousness, deputy director of Osloński National Institute, and also Wojciech Bednarski, curator, researcher, and program manager at the European Platform of Memory and Conscious. Right now, I will split with you microphones on the stage, and the dear audience, prepare please the questions. We are starting Q&A round. So I'm very welcoming you to raise the question. I see Hania Radzijowska has the question.
First, I would like to comment that I felt really moved by this presentation and this project. Really, it's no, I can even admit that I had tears in my eyes 3 times during this presentation. It's like very, I mean, when I was watching these pictures, just, you know, like scrolling, I didn't realize how powerful this project is. I mean, and it's really catching the heart of this experience. I share these moments of hesitation. What Andrii Portnov said, that there are millions. There were millions of people who were not capable to write a letter, but still this idea. How to show, because we have this totalitarianism, and on the opposite side we have this individual. Yes, it's like bringing back this individuality of the, I mean, face. It's like handwriting. It's the story. This is the love. It's what is very unique always, and it's a great idea. And the second, I would say that all these comments were so, I mean, so interesting. Thank you very much, because like it struck me that yes, the truth. I mean, how we discuss about museums, we discuss about these commemoration places and memorial. It's so connected to democracy. I mean, it's like we get used to these all places in the cities in Europe that they commemorate someone, I don't know, some events and so on, and we think that it's boring or, I don't know, not important. And it's crazy how, again, it's like this story about what Andrii, you said about Orange Revolution, that yes, we united in Europe, and then there is Orange Revolution. It's the same. We think, we really, in Berlin, there were so many discussions when it was like, really we need the memorials, for what we need memorials? And then we see, like, in Ukraine, what's going on under Russian occupation? They raised the memorials for KGB officers. So is it important? Why Putin had time to command the resolution of European Parliament? And on the other hand, what's going on in what Lukashenko is doing with all commemoration places in Belarus? I mean, he destroys. He's like, I mean, nothing existed. I mean, he makes like destroyed the memorial places, and it's like just the grass. Yes, and it's so we see that something crucial in this, what we treat in these bored Western societies, that it's not important. It's like let's not be so stubborn. And I have, sorry, this long comment, but I have very short question. When will you start process of production of this commemoration place? I mean, memorial.
So this is a question to me, probably. So we are trying, we are doing our best to start the process, administrative process. It has been already started, and we hope that this year we will secure, together with Brussels administration, the final site for the project, and then we will be able to start the application for the permit. It's not a very easy process. It's a difficult process because of many different reasons, and one of them is the complicated system of administration in Brussels. And but we feel much support from European Parliament. Last year, for example, more than 70, so more than 10% of European Parliament members from different parties, conservatives, EPP, Renew, even some socialists, undersigned the special letter from many different countries also, and parties and countries, to the Brussels administration to support us. and it was a kind of small breakthrough because the talk started, and we are working together with them on the problems, and probably we will change the site. We have now 5 possible sites to evaluation. But of course, to be realistic, I feel that this process will be long. But it allows us also to discuss, to promote the project, to discuss the scope of the project. Maybe one more answer for what Professor Portnov noticed, and it was discussed also that not everybody, or even not a majority of people who were killed, had this possibility to write. And maybe it's a good reason to point out one more aspect of the project, because the memorial is not only the vision of letters, but it will be linked with the digital documentary center. That means that if you we will use QR codes or similar technology that you can scan and have in your cell phone not only the transcription, the accessibility to every possible language of this letter, the history of the person, and so on and so on, but the access to wider knowledge and educational tools about the totalitarian system and its victims. So this is the moment when we can clearly say that you see just sample examples, representatives of many unknown people from Europe who were killed. And one more aspect which is very important, we will select about 800 letters. It's a lot, but of course it's just a sample. But this scale gives us a possibility to make this balance, national, gender, experience balance, to make this memorial as inclusive as possible. And of course, the process of the selection of these letters will be crucial process for the scope, for the real scope of this memorial. And we know that it will be extremely difficult to take this proper balance. And but I think that we can manage. So this is also the main concerns during discussions like that are about the scope of the project. And of course, we have some kind of answers, but maybe not now, not to speaking too long, but it's a very interesting issue.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Katarina Tarabukina from Vice. First of all, I want to thank you for this incredible presentation. It's also moved me very much as a person who is also involved in Vice projects directly with the memory, and for me it resonates absolutely. And your personal story, how you were involved through that, through your story with Belarus. And also because our last work actually was also based on the letters of Ukrainian forced labor workers. And it was a little bit different form, but it's also, I think, very important to give this voice, yes, of victims who are absolutely unknown. Sometimes we don't have their names. Sometimes in the letters, of course, they are censored. So it's absolutely working form, yes. So I'm very grateful and for all of this experience that you shared today with us. My question will be from a little bit topic. We have a really crucial situation, especially in Berlin, with absence of understanding of crimes of communism, yes, of Soviet crimes. Not only concerning constant battles around Second World War, this memorialization of Treptov Park, or here just standing next to us, but also the perception of communism as the idea that Soviets didn't manage just, And we were also making the project with Lenin's heads, this Lenin buste, I don't know, yes. And it was absolutely incredible experience here next to the Brandenburger Gate, 85 Lenin's heads. 60, a lot different. And it was absolutely incredible how people were reacting, yes? Because not only for people who still love Soviet Union because they were very young and they relocated here in 90s from Soviet, but also from absolutely German audience. But come on, he was a absolutely cool guy, he was a leader, it just, ideas went wrong, yes, and I mean, it was absolutely incredible conversations with people who had no idea. So Stalin is more somehow raise negative connotations, thanks God and thanks to Bundestag, at least for recognition of the genocide of a great famine, but basically all around red stars, busts of Lenin, also a lot of communistic, this horrible for us, especially Ukrainians, absolutely horrible visual language, it's still do not recognize as the language of genocide, yes, of the language of political crimes, not only crimes against ideas, crimes against humanity, whatever we can call it or recognize. So, and that's why my question will be, did you ever received some letters, opposed letters, that it should be reconciled from, I don't know, from some organizations, because, for example, in Berlin we have them who are constantly saying that we are twisting the history with our projects, that we're like critical, not critical. So do you ever have the resistance somehow with the people who, during this project, in many levels, yes, from, I don't know, from crazy people from the streets who are writing letters, yes, we know all of them, till some, I don't know, maybe political debates about how we can see it and from which perspective, totalitarianism, communism, imperialism in this area. Thank you.
So yes, we have, of course, resistance against this project, but nobody refused the support to give us a letter. Actually, platform gather a lot of institutions with archives, and we have access to a lot of materials like that. But there is a kind of problem with understanding this idea of all totalitarian regimes, because especially in the Western Europe, because a lot of people here thinks about totalitarianism only in the context of Nazism, and of course it's not the only attitude to this issue, but a lot of people in Brussels, for example, in France, see communism as a romantic idea, yes, which had some, of course, problems with implementation. And Stalinism is bad, but communism itself, it's a kind of idea. There are voices like that, but they are not official. So this is the hope, because officially, rather, we have, let's say, technical problems. Not an idea. We have very strong instrument behind us, the resolution of European Parliament, and the main scope of this project is written there, and the vast majority of Parliament adopted this resolution, voted for, and it is said this is for victims of all totalitarian regimes, and this kind of discussions were in 2009 in European Parliament. And European Parliament is the representative of European societies, so it is not easy to be against this openly. And I think that that's why we want to be very much in line with this resolution, and we want the scope of the memorial have in line with the scope of this resolution, because we think that this is the great, let's say, support, not only support. We want to fulfill the will of Parliament, that means the will of Europeans. But of course, there are some concerns, hesitations. There are questions about the definition of totalitarianism. And of course, there is a lot of discussions about this. when we focus on victims, it is much more easy to answer. But of course, we have some also classical definitions, Hannah Arendt and so on. One party, one leader, usually one leader, cult of the leader, not possible of acting of opposition. That does not mean that opposition not exist, but it is forbidden. Yes, in every country under totalitarian regime was some kind of opposition. Even in Auschwitz was underground. Yes, what we can learn in the exhibition here from the story of Pilecki. So there is always opposition because always there are some courage people who want to do resistance, but this is forbidden in totalitarian regime, and totalitarian party want to use ideology and secret police to control every possible aspect of social life. And this is the definition. And of course we can argue if in Poland in 80s was a totalitarian regime or not. And we can argue about this, but the definition is rather clear. And totalitarian regimes killed a lot of people in Europe, Europeans, because they were killed also in Far Asia, yes. But the scope of this particular project is the scope for Europe. It's pan-European memorial, that means Europeans. Also killed in Siberia, for example, deported there. So, of course, we have a lot of concerns like that. We discuss it. We are very open for the critique. We are very open for the argument. And I think even that it is very fruitful for us, because every kind of discussion like that show us the new possibility to answer these questions. And for example, this idea of documentary center, which was written in the European Parliament resolution, occurred with the whole, possibilities that it makes, in effect of this kind of discussion, that we heard, yes, this is very moving, but you don't have an access to knowledge. And we thought, yes, it's very important to connect somehow this symbolic artistic vision with the historical knowledge. So this is, I don't know if this fulfill the problem.
Yes, I can add and stress that, of course, memorial is, as a remembrance place, is very, very important, but it's more than that. This documentation center, the memorial can be seen as a gateway to deeper understanding of history, to deeper understanding also of individual history, because we want to translate the letters to each European Union language. So each and every language will have, each and every letter can have translations. You can seek for letters from your country. You can search for letters from for example, women, and so on and so on and so on. So this is a gateway to something more. And also we have this luck at the platform that we gather 72 different institutions where are experts in the field of history, of memory, of remembrance. And this is why we are discussing with also different entities, different organizations, and we are forging this idea, this definite scope of the project right now. And talking about Lenin, one of our members from Great Britain, Museum of Communist Terror, recently did a poll in the high school students, and I think that almost 20% of them was like, Lenin was okay guy. So yes, we need to be active in this field. Let's hope that the memorial can be also a project that kickstart this process of contacting with youngsters, with young Europeans, to teach them that no, Lenin wasn't a good person, right? So we really hope that memorial project will be something more, something not only like member space, but also documentation center, education hub, and so on.
I have a quick question to you, because you said that the letters will be translated into the languages of the members of European Union, and we mentioned today, first of all, Ukraine, and second, Belarus, and I mean, it's Europe.
Yes, so I think that's think maybe this is something that we should also think about, yeah, to create this more as a more inclusive space. But the starting point is a resolution of European Parliament, so European Union, and the basis is European Union official languages, at least. At least. Yeah.
I imagine that it can be every possible language that we have can find translator.
Does it mean it would be no Russian in this?
Good question. Maybe yes.
Or maybe this memorial can be educational tools for to get to know what.
In Russian, but no, it's complicated. No, we're also Russian.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm also very impressed. My name is Susanna Ord, and I'm working at the Viadrina Center of Polish and Ukrainian Studies with Andrii Portnov. I want to like to draw your attention to two other projects. I think they are very successful in memorial work. First of all, it's the German organization Action Reconciliation Services for Peace, which was founded a couple of years after the Second World War. And the project is to send young Germans to those countries who have suffered most from the Nazism to make a voluntary service and to work with memorial sites, but also with people who are survivors. Today they are working with handicapped, with homeless people. I myself, I spent 2 years from 82 to 84 in Majdanek in Poland, and as a West German, I learned a lot to tell that. And the other project are the so-called Stolpersteine. I don't know how to translate it into English, stumbling stones or something like that, which are already all over Germany, but of course in Germany, I have seen them in Germany, in Czech Republic, now I have seen them in Venezia, in the former ghetto. And I think your idea of this memorial site in Brussels could be expanded as well. I mean, it's a great idea to bring it all over Europe. I don't know, maybe it's more complicated than those small stones. We in Frankfurt, right now we prepare a project together with our Polish friends. We would like to create a platform as well to show regional history and how it's memorized by Poles and Germans, because this neighborhood, the border side, there is a lot of history of forced migration, and we would like to tell this story. We would like to create a place as well, but we don't have the manpower and we don't have the money. So the plan is to start with a platform, and I will have a look at your platform. Maybe there is a chance of working together, I don't know, but yeah, I think it was very interesting. I don't have a question right now, it's just my thoughts to what you presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see there are questions maybe, but maybe why this memorial in Brussels? Because the idea is that it needs to be at heart of Europe, of European Union. That's why it will be at a location in Brussels. So, but maybe in the future we could do like pop exhibitions popping around Europe at the same time at meaningful places. But this definitely, then we need the resources for it also. So let's hope that we'll receive them.
Christoph Meissner from the Berlin Karlshorst Museum. I'm just having a question. First of all, the memorial is really good, and I'm really thinking about, is this memorial necessary? Because the question is, we have a European House of History in Brussels, and it's right beside the place where you want to build this memorial. And the question, what I'm just asking myself, would it be not better to link both places? And because I'm just struggling always when there's a place, and we should go to all the places. I'm just thinking about more to take powers together and thinking about to connect them. So that's the question to you, how you will deal with this.
Thank you very much. I see it's like complementary projects. The House of European History was established more or less in the same time than the European Parliament resolution. So also I can assume that European Parliament see this as a complementary project. So House of European History is actually part of European Parliament office. And the first site which was appointed for the memorial, it was also, I think, not a coincidence, because the Jean Square is very close to the House of European History. It's on the second side of the street, and I think that in this environment it would be good and complementary. Yes, you can. So the House of European History is an exhibitional space, more or less, and of course, place of discussions, events, and so on. The memorial is the place of commemoration at first. And after that, the access to the digital documentary center. And I think that, so we are very open for this kind of cooperation, and it's not a secret that the platform was kind of had a lot of concerns about the shape of House of European History during the process of the creation, and these concerns are maybe still, but this is the fact that this museum exists, and I think that it has also the positive role in Europe. And I even had some meetings with Constanze Itzel, the director, and I think that we have our unique missions. And I want to see these projects as complementary. So for me, as a president of platform, very important thing is the cooperation with everybody, and very important. And our mission is to commemorate the victims, and this is our, let's say, unique mission, which is not against, not competitive. I think it's complementary. We will switch the site probably, but it is maybe, if in this context the new one will be a little bit worse, because you will not have this effect that, for example, if you go to the House of European History, you can just on the opposite side of street go there, but it's still complementary.
Yes, I can refer to Mr. Mausbach, and memorial is memorial. Museum is museum, right?
This is the most simple
one. My name is Regina Barendt, interested citizen. I just yesterday learned about this memorial project from VT newsletter. Thank you very much. And my first idea was this can be a great thing, and it can help to develop or to support the development of an European identity among all the member countries. I mean, my generation maybe is lost from that, but the future generations, they will need they should have a European identity. I think this is very important, and therefore this European commemoration of totalitarian regimes is also very important. My question is, again, maybe about the definition. In terms of political geography, which countries do you include? And for instance, there are lots of smaller kind of locked-in dictatorships all over Europe in different periods of time during the last century and nowadays, of course. And how do you select letters? So will this be about, more or less about the Nazi regime in Germany and the occupied territories and the cruelties during Stalinism and communist regimes mainly, or are there also other countries? Then, for instance, the former Soviet bloc, each of the smaller countries, they also had their local dictators and ruling party and security and everything. Thanks.
Maybe yes. This is the question of the specific, precise scope, and the answer for this is not very easy for now, and it will be the process of selection. So Tszwai collected a lot of letters to fulfill or to put it in the competition, but final letters we will select together with the International Committee of Experts in a long process. I imagine that the first step will be the narrow committee, International Committee of Experts, to formulate the criteria of this, and after that a lot of debates to select these letters, and after that debates together with Tszwai how to put these concrete letters in the topography of the memorial. So I don't have all answers now. The general picture is shown. For sure, it is more than European Union, for sure. It's at least Europe with the border, frontier, I don't know where. For sure, this is Albania, for sure. For sure, this is the former Soviet countries. But we don't have exact answers for now. And we know that it will be difficult. So that's why maybe it's even good that the process is not very fast, because we have time for this kind of discussions. So we have the plan for this year to establish the first narrow committee to formulate the criteria, and after that spread this committee into the bigger group of people, not only historians and specialists, but also the kind of stakeholders and people involved in process, because it has to be considered from many different point of views. And finally, we will select these 800 of letters, and probably it will be very discussive.
Yes, and this project needs to be pan-European. So yeah, we at the platform are leading the project. We are coordinating it, but we hope to include specialists from all over Europe to really make this project pan-European, common in a sense.
Hello, my name is Jelena Balvaric. I'm an interested citizen. I'm Croatian. So in the Balkans, Western Balkans and in Croatia, of course, we have a very complex situation with the regimes from the past, because we had soft communism, our dictator kind of separated from Stalin. So it's very complicated. I have several questions in terms of classifying the regimes. There were, of course, wars in the Balkans relatively recently, and genocide as well. So Milosevic regime was a dictatorship, and the genocide also something that happened recently, which I think a lot of people would interpret as a failure of Europe to respond as well, or international community in general. So my question is, we have in Serbia now a person in charge who was propaganda minister of the Milosevic regime. So when you spoke about the, you know, how important it is to remember, somehow to me it seems that still we haven't learned enough. So I think the idea is great. I would like to thank the Pilecki-Institut for organizing this, and also all the speakers, and also to the architects. My question is, so first of all, do you have blank letters? So the future letters which people who are going to be maybe exposed to some regimes, current politicians are making decisions about, are going to write? That's one question. The second question is, if you're, so the memorial is based in Brussels. What I see as a great advantage of that is that, of course, it's important for the ordinary people to have an opportunity to think about this if they want. However, I think who is actually supposed to get these letters in their face are the politicians who are making decisions. So are there ways, are ways explored how to make the politicians who are making decisions in Brussels more aware of this emotional aspects? And the third question is, if you are going to do the digital platform, are the candidate countries for the European Union and their languages, especially the ones who are currently under regimes which have, regimes, politicians or leaders who have links to dictators from the recent past and genocide, people who were responsible for some genocides which happened on the European soil. Are you going to translate them to those languages? So these are three questions I had. Thank you very much.
There was a lot of questions. All of them are more or less about the scope of the project, and this project is about victims of totalitarian regimes of 20th century. This is the scope from the European Parliament resolution. And of course, in your question about blank letter is whole dramatic question of humanity and what we see nowadays about contemporary and future regimes who kill people, innocent people, and do genocide. And maybe this is the kind of idea how to include the kind of one more blank letter to refer with this kind of reflection for the audience. But generally, scope of the monument is a commemoration of the past of the 20th century. And we have this contemporary context. It is one of the reasons why we are doing this, but the scope is about the past, and not about the every genocide, every possible, but made by totalitarian regimes. And of course, there are some kind of concerns about, for example, Balkan states and so on. Was it totalitarian regime or not? But we can evaluate. I don't know really, sorry, I'm not an expert about the former Yugoslavia. I know a little bit more about Albania, and for sure that regime was a totalitarian regime. We visited Albania last year with Tszwai, and we saw all these places like churches and mosques which were destroyed because of this horrible law introduced by Enver Hoxha. So it was for sure. But we have to evaluate every single question. Next year, probably one of Croatian organization will join us. We have active members from Slovenia, so we have to spread our presence with the partners from that part of Europe. So this is it about the scope. There was a question also about languages, yes? No. Politicians.
Sorry. About the politicians. So I think, it's in Brussels, okay, European center, but I think it's a center in a political sense because the politicians are there who make the decisions. So I think this is a big opportunity in a way to make those who make decisions more aware of these challenges. Yeah.
We're trying to do so, actually, and we have some success in European Parliament, and we feel great support. And of course, this is the heart of European Union. We don't have any other better. And if the Europe is a kind of community and European Union is the political representation of this community, we have to do there. We have great support also from some states, rather from Central Eastern Europe, from Baltic states, from Poland, Romania, Czech Republic. So actually in 2022, head of states signed a special letter to European to Council of European Union and to support our project. So it's quite high level, but I think that it's also very important to have regular people involved, European public opinion, if it is something like that, to the project. So of course we are working on it also. This is very important aspect of this project.
Thank you. I pass the microphone to the next question. And friends, we have just 2 places left for the questions, so please make your questions very short.
Super short question about letters itself, about the people who were writing these letters. Do you have, for some of them or all of them, is that the part of the project that you know not only the name probably, if it exists, but also what happened with this people? So I'm saying about resolution of why this particular person was in the prison, and what this person was doing during the lifetime. Yes, why I'm asking is just thoughts on the table. Maybe it's out of your concept at all and you want to concentrate just on this moment of last letter, but we had a huge critique of the project Stolpersteine that was mentioned before, especially from representatives of Jewish community. It's super beautiful project. It's all over mostly Europe, and you can see it mostly especially in the area next to where we're sitting. But the critique was that this is a commemoration that makes Jewish in German eyes only like victims. And this huge critique actually continued, and as a response of this critique, we have right now, I think 3 already books about the people who are in the Stolperstein, because they're only when they were born, and what happened to them mostly in this area, it's ended in Auschwitz. So this critique of seeing people only like a victim, not this vital energy, how it was cutted by death of the regime, it's basically a very interesting philosophical question how we see the victims, yes, and whether they were, I mean, victims, yes, we're not questioning them, we're just thinking about what was the vital part of this person and why totalitarian, that's why totalitarian regime made it. And just the question for your archival work, whether you included at least something, because we know that it's super complicated to have this information. Thank you.
Yes, so the process of gathering the letters is not finished. ZYSOC did a great work with this open call, and already it gives us something substantial, 40,000 letters. But we know that we need to gather a lot more to really discover the fates of different kind of people or different kind of lives. And the key point here is documentation center. Yes, we want to have not only translations, but you can go deep into history of this person. We want to have this research on this particular people that wrote in these letters. So this documentation center is very important to us, and there will be all this information, context, as much as we can go with their biographies, with the links between them. Digital tool here is we want to use this perks of technology to really create this broad vision of also interconnectedness in this many lives, and to show that these people were real, right? That they had their lives. Some, of course, this is memorial for the victims, but many of the people that letters will appear there, there were also heroes of sorts. So we also need, we know that we need to be sure, and we need to do a lot of research about the authors of the letters. We need to be sure also that there are innocent okay.
Sorry, I will give a specific example. Edith Stein, who was a Jewish woman, a philosopher. She cooperated with Husserl. She converted to Catholicism, but she was arrested in Echt in Netherlands because she was nun in Carmel in Echt in Netherlands, both as a Catholic and as a Jew, because Netherlands bishops protested against persecution of the Jews, and in revenge, occupation Nazi authorities arrested people who were both Jews and Catholics and sent them to Auschwitz and killed momentarily. It was in 1943. Yes. So she wrote last letters. She wrote also diary. We know a lot about her. And we have also Stolperstein in Breslau, in Wrocław, dedicated to her. And this is the kind of work that we can do. So we have a letter or diary in this case, from the very last moment before arrested. After this, she was sent to Auschwitz and killed momentarily. And we have a long story of the person. We have all context. And we know she was her story, her all, and this is the ideal moment of, you know, the whole context of each letter. I would like to do so. I don't know if it is possible because it is great work, but we want to evaluate every single letter.
Jörg Mouret, I'm the director of the German, no, not of the German-Russian, of the Museum Berlin-Karlshorst, and I want to support the Croatian experience, I would say, because as a question, did you forget about the European South? And my answer will be yes, it seems to me. Because when you presented yesterday in the Bundestag, there was nothing about the experience in the South. We heard about Croatia, think about the Franco system in Spain, think about Italy, and so on and so on. And so even the historical experience in Spain with fascism or whatever ended not up in 45 and was replaced by any Stalinism. So it longed for a very, very long time. And this is another European experience which have nothing to do with the Stalinism and German form of fascism. So it's much, much wider. And just as a hint, think about that.
Yes, of course, and we remember about the South, and even one of the letters found out by Tszwai was from Milan. Yes, or of course the case of Spain is very specific and also needs a discussion. But we have to remember about these victims even Mussolini was the author of this term of totalitarian state. Yes, so of course we have to remember about these victims also.
I just really want to add that those questions are really valid, and I really share your concern as well, as someone who's involved in the process. But I think the people who are going to be invited to this international scientific committee are very important, because they will then undertake this arduous process of going through, you know, lots of debates, I'm sure, and filtering to actually get to a point where we feel comfortable with this election. So again, I just want to echo what Marek and Wojciech said earlier. It's the process that is important. You know, we don't know the answers. I'm as ignorant as everyone else is in terms of which letter will eventually make it to the memorial. But I think this is the opportunity, and it is a beautiful opportunity for European experts who are who have the credentials and representative of their countries to come together to really have this really important discussion and debates. So I think this is my response to your questions. Hope that makes sense.
So my name is Joachim Ciecierski, I'm from the Polish radio. I have a question to you, Tszwai, and to Mr. Mausbach. How would you feel if your vision and your concept would be brutally changed by someone in Brussels, let's say? Let's hope this will be like this, but it's your vision, yes, that you worked on, and someone will change it. I'm asking to Mr. Mausbach, because this is your case. You are, since 7 years, you are lobbying for a monument, and we can clearly see that after 7 years, people in Berlin, or some people in Berlin, they brutally want to change your vision, yes? So what is your feeling, and how would you feel if someone would change brutally your vision?
Of course, I'm very angry about it, because we started a kind of movement, really, with a lot of people, prominent people, and even the Bundestag had decisions about it, and so on and so on. And after that, some people captured our idea and changed it from a monument to a house. But I don't think it's the last word about it, because I think the idea is strong and it is necessary, this kind of monument. It is really necessary, and so I'm convinced it will come after some time. I told about the Holocaust memorial. There were also these discussions, and at the end it was built, and it's very convincing. And it's, in this Holocaust memorial, it is a kind of association of Jewish cemetery. Yeah, and in Frankfurt, there were the names of the victims were put into the wall of the historical Jewish cemetery. But I wanted to say this idea with the letters is genial. It's a really great idea. But back to your question, there is another memorial I have started. It is a memorial for the peaceful revolution. In Poland, they have a memorial in Danzig, yeah, for the Solidarność. But in Germany, it's very difficult to remember and to ehren, to give respect to this peaceful revolution. It was in German history very important. Yeah, it was the second time that a divided Germany was united, and by the people. Not in former times it was by war, but now it was a peaceful revolution, a great thing. But it's 20 years now ago, but it's building now. But it's very difficult going on. Maybe this year, end of this year, it could be ready. It will be erected before the reconstructed castle here in Berlin. Yeah. I would like to speak about quite another aspect of memorials. In the Ukraine, in Kiev, the Maidan Revolution, people gathered around a monument, this big column. And maybe for your interest, I have been in Beijing in 1976, working as a foreign language press. And in the April 1976, people gathered in the first spontaneous demonstration around a memorial on the Tiananmen Place, a memorial for the died heroes. And hundreds of thousands of people for 3 days demonstrated. And it was the beginning, the pushing, or encouraging the government, then some months later, after the death of Mao Zedong, to end the left radicals in this cultural revolution with this lot of victims also, and began to open China, to reform China, to open China to the world. So I wanted to say memorials can be also crystallization points for gathering people to mourn. And very often is the death of a person, a popular person, a political person, the start of demonstrations, and people very often then meet and are gathering around memorials as a crystallization point.
I think it's a very good question, and it's not easy to make the answer very short, but I would try. I think I genuinely don't see if you like, the design of the memorial as my vision. And I actually think it's not very, I'm just trying to dissect your question and try to answer it in a step-by-step manner, because it's actually a very, in a way, it's a very philosophical question as well. But what I'm saying is, I think, for me, because I thought it through very carefully during the design process myself about my ego and my thinking process, I think it's actually not very helpful to see this as a one person's vision, and and if anything, this is the vision of the European Parliament, which is representing, you know, almost 500 million European people. And to answer your question, well, how would I feel if some people are going to change, if you like, my vision? I think to answer that, it really depends on why would they want to do that, in what context. For example, you know, members of the audience already raised a very valid question of, you know, being inclusive of, having this memorial being inclusive of the experiences of, you know, south of Europe, for example. And me personally, because the you know, the evil pact was signed in 1939, you know, the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact, and I personally, if it's just about me, then I will feel really strongly about having some kind of connections with, for example, the atrocities happened in Ukraine before 1939. If you draw a line in 1939, then what would that mean? Does it mean anything before that wouldn't count? But again, it's not really about me anymore. For example, I'm sure out of the 40,000 letters I helped gather, maybe none of it will eventually make it to the memorial. But that's absolutely okay, because I think ultimately the final decision should rest with the scientific committee going to be assembled by the platform and the EU. However, I will really do my very best to try to stop certain bureaucrats or politicians for very, very, very selfish reason to try to change the design of the memorial. For example, they're already doing that in Brussels. They're kicking us around. Yeah, nice idea, but not here. Can you go elsewhere, please? So that, I think, me personally, as a citizen of Europe, I consider myself a citizen of Europe. I will, really be vocal and try my very best to be part of the campaign to go against certain people who are just there to delay the process of commemorating the victims. So the answer is it really depends.
Yes. So yes, and I want to state that we, as a platform, as a leader of this project, we promised Tszwai that we want to not any memorial. We want this vision, his project, an echo in time to be realized. And this is very important to us. For example, the letter from the members of European Parliament, they also stated that they are supporting this project and this vision, not any project, any vision, this one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for, if our experts, Krista-Marija Läbe or Professor Andrii Portnov wants to add something very shortly, because I have seen that Andrii made some notes. And to lose the chance to have the very small comment on the end, I don't want to lose this. And then we will close our very fruitful discussion.
Yes, I would like to add something, because speaking as a person who does not have a memorial, for example, here in Berlin to commemorate Ukrainians every year when the anniversary dates come up, we really, and as an organization as well, we really feel this emptiness, that we don't have a place to go to when certain dates approach, if it's the 8th of May, for example, that we just don't have a place where we can go. And as an organization, we decided to create spaces ourselves, like my colleague mentioned before, that we did performances also with letters, or that we built our own memorial where people could put flowers in front of, where people were forced laborers from Ukraine were working here in Berlin. But it's every year it's the same struggle, to decide where are we going, how can commemoration look like, because we do not have a memorial here in Berlin and overall in, for example, Brussels or so on in a European capital. So I really want to emphasize this emptiness that also gives, and that healing is not ended. Obviously, in the Ukrainian context, the war is happening right now, so there can anyway not be a healing and a conclusion to this. But for us, it would be just really important as a country and as people who were really suffering also in the 20th century to have some certain recognition. And if it's, for example, within this project, I think that would be already an important step. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I actually support very much what we've just heard, because I could even tell you it's kind of semi-secret information. I have been involved into discussing what official Ukrainian embassy, for instance, could and should do on the 8th of May last year. It was very complicated, because on the one hand, and we've heard about it already as well, it is dangerous, politically dangerous, yeah, to say, okay, all those Soviet memorials, they're just for Russians, we'll focus on something else. because then the narrative we've heard today as well, that actually it was Ukraine who was occupied by the Nazi troops. It was in Ukraine where the Holocaust by bullets happened, and not in Russia. So you could not just easily say, okay, here is Ukraine, here is Soviet Union. It's much more complicated. It's really entangled. And that's a real challenge. And frankly speaking, if you ask me even right now, like how to do that, what is the right way, it would be very difficult for me to answer. Because on the one hand, it still has a logic of continuing like being present at the Soviet memorials, despite, you know, all the problematic heritage behind them, and to think about a new one. So in this sense, really, it's a real challenge. There is no easy solution. And keeping this point in mind, I'm afraid the same problem, of course, occurs with the notion of pan-European memory sites, whatever, because we could and should probably immediately include Spain, Croatia, Serbia, name it. On the other hand, let us be frank, dear colleagues, that as far as I understood this like political debate and the resolution of the European Parliament, it is first and foremost about the political recognition of the Soviet crimes and their impact on some so-called new members of the European Union. And I'm always for inclusion, you know, of course, who's against? But we should be aware that including too much or including everything, we could also lose, you know, some focus, which is still important. And in this case, actually, I like how you put it. It's very good that, of course, it's very much about Molotov-Ribbentrop pact. Also, let us not forget how this story influenced the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was actually the first mass movement in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and later on West Ukraine that people were demonstrating against the pact that was still denied to exist by Gorbachev. He only later on said, okay, I should admit it was there. So you could use also like commemorative, you know, projects to make politicians to, you know, confess, which is not bad. And that is why I think we should be like really aware about it. We should also be aware of the fact, dear colleagues, and that's very sad, but that's true, that mass crimes and genocides, they were committed not just by totalitarian regimes and even not just by regimes. There were mass crimes committed by underground groups, you know, and so on. And it's, I'm afraid, not for this story. It's for something else, even though quite often it was related. Yeah, very much related. So it's really difficult, but I'm kind of like delicately saying that maybe you, as the people who still decide about this committee and whatever, should be not afraid to put some emphasis or some focus or some like main point, because otherwise, you know, it could go. I'm thinking, should I say so or not? It could go in the direction of this idea with the German-Polish memorial went. And maybe the last point here, like talking about Lenin's and all this stuff, I should admit, dear colleagues, you know, like my experience this semester. For instance, when I brought my students some books, there are now very nice books about like the pictures of, you know, dismantled Lenins in Ukraine. It was kind of a sensation. One student even wanted to buy one for himself immediately. So, you know, there is something behind it. But I think what is really also behind it, and let's keep it in mind as historians, rightly so, Franco regime in Spain lasted until 1975, pretty long. 1975, my God, pretty long. But the Soviet regime lasted still longer. Yeah, so 1970, 1991. That's a big, you know, time frame, right? Much longer than the Nazi regime. Much longer than, like, name it. And of course, this time flow inevitably brings different contexts. Absolutely. Yeah, you have Lenin, then you have Stalin before the war, you have Stalin during the war, after the war, and you have, of course, also crimes committed after Stalin. Come on, it was not like Stalin died and, you know, crime stopped. Of course not, not at all. But in historical terms, it's still not easy, like, to keep somehow this, like, you know, evidence that it was still not the same. Even Stalin was not the same during his pretty long rule. And I'm afraid, dear colleagues, you should face this issue as well, because it's very easy to say, all of Soviet crimes. But in fact, if you want to understand it and to explain, it's not enough. So let's think about it, and let's hope that this memorial will be built, because I'm also really kind of sad thinking that there could be, and probably there still are, conscious efforts to delay it as much as possible. Let's not delay it forever. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for this very short comments. By this, we are closing our event. And thank you for everybody who stayed like for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Thank
That's
you.
incredible. We have today Tszwai, the architect of the future memorial. We wish you luck and strength to fight for your idea and protect this. Krista-Marija Läbe, Florian Mausbach, and Professor Andrii Portnov, Marek Mutor, and Wojciech Bednarski. Thank you so much.
And Eva Jakubowska, thank you for your moderation. And thank you very much on behalf of Pilecki-Institut. It was a very fruitful discussion and many inputs. And I have discussed with myself during this meeting, and I think really you should consider Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Russian language also. Thank you very much.